you supportive of wealth taxes? And I'm defining that as not taxing income, but
Yeah.
looking at the net worth of somebody
Yeah.
and taking a percentage of their net worth.
Yeah, again, to me, that's just a variation on the idea of a property tax. I think it's legitimate. There are some problems with doing it in practical terms. It can be hard.
This is why it's hard, right?
Or like, how do you
Tried
tax like somebody's art collection? Or there are things that can make it tricky.
One of the things that I learned when I had this company, and it was a public company, so I had public stock. And someone came along and said, Stephen, you know, with your public stock that you have, so started this company when I was 21, does well. By 27, the stock that I have is public stock, which means it's on a stock market. Someone came to me at 27 and said, Stephen, do you know you can just take a loan against your public stock? And I went, what? They went, you can just get a tax-free loan. So if your stock is worth $50 million right now, they will give you a 50% loan without paying tax on that stock. So they will
crazy low interest rate, right?
Like almost nothing. They will just transfer you today $25 million in cash, and you will have to pay no tax. And guess what? If the stock comes down, they'll just sell it. So you'll never really have a real sort of tax liability there. I couldn't believe this was possible. And so I was like, is this what all the rich people do? And they told me, yes, this is how it works. This is what Elon's doing. Elon is taking a pretty much tax-free loan against his Tesla stock, and they're transferring him $1 billion in cash, and he can live off that, start new companies with that, and never have to have a tax transaction. So I thought, why don't politicians tax that?
There's always going to be a cat and mouse, right? Whenever we figure out a way to make sure you can't hide all of your wealth or all of your income from being fairly taxed, very wealthy people will figure out some other place to hide it. And then we'll have to develop a new policy to deal with that. But I guess my point is that's okay. Too often we have just hesitated to do anything, refused to do anything because it might be hard or because it might not last. But if the idea that somebody will figure out a way around this law meant that you shouldn't have the law, that would be an argument against having any law. So it's messy, it's hard. But I am sure that if we had a more reasonable rate of taxation on capital gains and on corporate income, and if we made it harder to pass along wealth without, especially inherited wealth, without paying any taxes on it, or some of these other maneuvers like this borrowing thing you're talking about, we would have a fairer country because we'd still have capitalism. There'd still be lots of motivation and lots of reason to innovate and build a business and create jobs and do all the things that very wealthy people have done. And also, we would be out of this doom loop we're in where they're saying, well, we can't possibly have as good healthcare as other countries. We couldn't possibly do something like, I don't know, fast trains here in the United States. We couldn't possibly have rural hospitals be properly funded or public education. Of course we can. This is the wealthiest economy in the world. It just doesn't add up that we can't have nice things. But if we aren't collecting a fair level of taxes, then of course we're going to come up short when we're trying to fund those things. And the biggest thing of all, that numerically that we're facing right now is this massive debt. Now, it's not fashionable on the left to talk about deficits and the debt, partly because, I think Democrats are pretty sick of that being invoked as a reason not to do things like roads and bridges and schools and hospitals that we believe in. But it's now escalated to a level that no one can ignore it. And it turns out, some analysis has suggested or shown that if you just start the clock at the beginning of this century with the big Bush tax cuts in, I think, 2001, and then you go through the Trump tax cuts for the wealthiest, you add all that up, if it weren't for all those tax cuts, the debt would actually be going down right now. So they can fully account for what's happened to the increase in the debt. And we just don't have to accept that.
I've got this graph here of US national debt growth. I'll throw that up on the screen between 1970 and 2026. It looks like a rocket is taking off. And I sat here with Ray Dalio just a couple of days ago. He talks about these sort of big economic boom and bust cycles. He talks about how every 80 years or so, you kind of see a great power falter and struggle. And we are 80 years into the American power. And he says that the writing is on the wall as it relates to what happens next when you let debt go like this and you start getting sort of internal conflict and you start trying to please the world. And
what's going on with the debt is both evidence of it and part of the problem. I think it's a symptom, but in some ways it's a cause. It could be a cause of a currency crisis or force us to redo our whole tax code within the next few years. One thing I learned about recently is a principle called Stein's law. It's named after a Reagan-era economist, actually the father of Ben Stein from, if you remember, Ferris Bueller. The principle is very simple. if something cannot go on forever, it will stop. It's one of these blindingly obvious things that we don't think about enough at a moment like this, where everybody agrees the debt can't keep going up like this. It's just almost definitionally impossible. Pretty much everyone agrees our politics can't go on like this. And if something can't go on forever, it won't. So then the question is, okay, then what's going to happen? I believe one of two things can happen: reform or catastrophe. And the whole reason I'm involved in public life is to try to make sure that it's reform and not catastrophe.
Can I ask a question on this? So on this Stein's law thing, and why, irrespective of what you've just said, which makes perfect sense to me, this line keeps going up of national debt. Is it in part kind of like musical chairs with politicians, where you come in for 4 years and the music is playing and you're kind of hoping that the music doesn't stop during your term because you want to spend money because that's politically positive. If you're helping people's healthcare, if you're building infrastructure, positive. People are going to like you more, they're going to vote you in. But the nature of politics means that you really do play for 4 years and then maybe you play for 8.
Right.
But this might be a 2-decade catastrophe. The music might stop in 2 decades. So actually, when you think about people's incentive structures, you're incentivized to actually not think about the future. You're incentivized to like be remembered and pass the baton to the next Democrat in 4 years' time in a way that's positive. So that's why we're seeing this. Because clearly, if someone was in power for 100 years, or maybe if the time horizon was even longer, maybe they would have thought about this debt rapidly increasing.
Yeah, but I think it also comes down to like, why do you think you're here if you're in office? Like, are you in office just in order to hold it?
It seems like that sometimes.
It's not worth it. Being in a position to make a difference and hold public office, like it's an exciting thing. It's a compelling thing. It's a meaningful thing. And it comes with a lot of things that are, good for your ego. I get all of that. But also, it's just not worth it unless you understand that you hold an office in order to do things with policy and power to make people better off, not the other way around.
I guess the American people and everybody listening now will be thinking, fool me once, Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Because I've sat there and I've watched the elections and all of them talk about bringing down the public debt. And then I look at this graph and I go, oh, it goes up again. And Trump says the same about spending and nope, it's gone up again. It almost feels like, in a way, that
I feel like you're trying to be nice.
No. I don't know. I can understand why people are sort of disenfranchised with politics.
Yeah, me too.
And I wonder if, this is why they're picking a radical, this is why.
Right. So,
this is why.
Oh, God.
Because this is disruption. This is kind of burn it down to some degree. And
right. So this is why everywhere I go, I'm trying to talk to my own party about making sure that we understand that dealing with this is not the be all and end all. That our mission can't be to just take power and then go back to what we had before. That what we had before is actually what led to this. In other words, guys like Trump don't get very far unless you're already in an environment where the political and social and economic systems are letting people down, which is, I think, how we wound up here. And I worry there will be a big temptation in my party to say, okay, our job is to take power, turn back the clock, reverse the damage, fix what was broken, and get us back to where we were, get us back on track. I hear the word back a lot. I hear the prefix re a lot, reverse, rebuild. And I'm very worried about that, distracting from what our actual mission has to be, which is to change and fix things so that we'll be set up well for the next 80 years. So that's a harder project, for sure. But also sometimes the incentives change because the public is ready for something different. And I think the public tried one flavor of something different with Trumpism and is ready to spit it out. And so the question then is, okay, what are we offering in its place? And to me, that's where some very day-to-day things, like setting up a better healthcare system, or reducing what we're paying in tariffs, or better infrastructure, or any of the other policy, paid family leave, all these policy things that I'd like to see happen, really depend on fixing a political system that's just not as sexy. But it can be powerfully motivating because our country was started by people who fought a revolution to change the political system. And I just can't imagine that it was just like Jefferson and Hamilton and these guys sitting in their studies reading, John Locke and Rousseau and thinking, oh, it would be neat to try that somewhere. I think they believe that like their lives and everybody's lives would be better, different, if we actually had a different system. And then they risked violent death in order to challenge the existing political system that was the monarchy and replace it with the republic, the democratic country that they set up that is the United States of America, right? So it's not like this can't stir passion. Should we not be a country where everybody's vote counts the same? That would mean a popular vote for the presidency. We ought to do that. I just think everybody's vote ought to count the same. And the person who gets the most votes ought to win. This is not a hard thing for us to buy into in literally any other election we run in our political system. We need to do things like make it just ban gerrymandering where districts are being drawn. So consider this. We have 435 seats in the House. 9 out of 10 are so red or so blue that you basically know who's going to win before the first vote is cast. 9 out of 10. In a 50-50 country. That makes no sense. And of course, what it leads to is the people in those seats are either very comfortable and not really worried about being responsive to the people, or if they are in danger, they're in danger from their own side. What's amazing to me when I look at how Americans feel about certain big issues, like making sure there's healthcare for everybody, or raising the minimum wage, or having higher rates of taxes on the wealthy and on corporations, or background checks on guns, or marriage equality for same-sex couples, all kinds of things. There's like 60 or 70% agreement on most of the issues that most people tell pollsters they care about the most. So how can we be a country that's got 60 or 70% agreement on issue after issue after issue? And we fail to get those policies done, and we keep proceeding like it's normal to be a 50-50 country where everybody's at each other's throats. That to me is evidence of a broken system. If we don't fix the system, I don't think we're going to get very far.
It's interesting because when I think about the last sort of 20 years of politics, we had, the Bush era, then we had Democrats and so on that were very polished. Bush was kind of very polished as well. Then we had Biden, who was very polished, kind of like career politician, says the right things, reads off the teleprompter. And then it seems globally like people wanted some disruption. We had Brexit going on over there. We've got Nigel Farage increasing in popularity over the last 10 years or so as relates to his political probabilities. And then over in the United States, we have Trump arrive. Again, not a career politician, not clean, not teleprompter kind of guy. If Democrats are to win, as you say, it's certainly not going to go back to the polished Joe Biden teleprompter. I almost think that there's going to need to be some disruptive character on the left side of politics to win over those independents, but also some of those Republicans. Do you agree with that broadly?
I think that's right. I mean, I think it depends what we mean by polished, right? That can mean a lot of different things. I think, but I think you're talking about a sort of authenticity that people expect. And the paradox of Trump is he's authentic even when he's lying, because it just seems like he's, whatever he is, he's not reading talking points. At least that's how it seems. I think also part of this is just it's actually a technology thing. So the technology that dominated politics for as long as I've been alive was television. And I think it produced a generation of people, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, and Donald Trump were all born within a few weeks of each other.
Really?
Yeah, they were all products of the summer of, I think it was 1946. Coming out of that generation, Joe Biden near to them in age, right, into whatever's next, I think you're going to have leaders, and this can be potentially a very good thing, who are just a little bit better able to just kind of show their humanity. Being a long podcast like this one, right? Like I remember when long form meant like maybe a 30-minute NPR interview. Now you're sitting for sometimes 2 or 3 hours. I don't think it's possible as a matter of physical stamina to stay on talking points for 2 or 3 hours because you want to. Yeah. Like it just, And so, somebody once said that the running for office is like an MRI of the soul anyway. But that's even more true now than it used to be, because there's so many different kind of ways of having to kind of show who you are. We used to imagine that the people in charge are just like next level, like on a different plane of existence. And I think it's become harder and harder to believe that because we know too much, right? And so I think we're trading that for just wanting people that we have a reason to trust.
We see the same across business. We talked a lot about over the last 10 years how we've shifted from this black box world where the PR department would paint the image of the company on the outside of this black box. And then we moved, because of phones, and everyone has a mobile phone now and a camera in their pocket and a social media platform so they can give their own opinion, to this glass box world where actually the job is to let everybody see inside. Because if you don't, someone else will paint the box for you. So actually defense became for big CEOs in the world now, coming on podcasts and having a personal brand and having a social media account. I think the same for politicians, that actually the winning strategy now is being a glass box, which is build your own reference points through transparency. Which is why the podcasts like this are, I think, probably going to dominate the next election cycle to some degree.
Yeah, I think it's true not just for politics, like running and being a candidate. I think it's increasingly true for government too. I mean, I started to feel this at the Department of Transportation. You're running this huge enterprise, 55,000 people, $145 billion. It's bigger than most GDPs in most countries. And what I found was that there were so many situations where people who just are generally mistrustful of government or media would assume the worst. And the only antidote to that was to be way more transparent than a federal agency or department was used to being. But what I found was kind of the machinery of the department was not set up for that. It was designed to be, accountable, but accountable in the sense that if there's something going on and a member of Congress is worried about it, they can write a letter and 6 months later they'll get a report. And I'm trying to figure out how do I, because, I'd carry a phone in my pocket too. Like, how do I take it out sometimes and like shoot a video, like tell people what's going on? Sometimes they're going to think that we don't care about them, that we're putting a highway through their neighborhood and we don't care how it's going to hurt them, or that we're not responding to a disaster in a Republican area because it's a Republican area, or any other number of things that people might believe if we don't show them what we're actually doing and why.
Got this cap here.
Okay.
Pete Buttigieg, 2028. When you think about running for president or being president of the United States, the most powerful nation on earth, do you not have imposter syndrome? And what is it about the job that you think, because, it's pretty crazy for anyone to think they could run the most powerful nation on earth and not think, God, there's a couple of things that I'm not going to be great at.
Yeah. I mean, the whole idea of the system was that no one person should have too much power, right? That's why we got rid of monarchy. But we've wound up with this presidency that uniquely in our country, not just the country, the world, right, has this incredible amount of power. That the lives of billions of people go differently and could be much better or could be much worse based on decisions that get made in that office. And the idea that we would have just one human being doing that is, on some level, terrifying. But, part of what we did as a country is we set up a whole bunch of things around that human being. And that's everything from like advisors to laws to Congress, and the courts, like to make sure that there's some balance, to try to make sure that whoever's in that seat can make the best decisions they possibly could and has to act within certain boundaries. But yeah, I mean, look, all the way down to when I was elected mayor and I was in my 20s, like obviously I believed I could do the job or I wouldn't have run for it. But, even just walking into the office of the mayor of the fourth largest city in Indiana on the 14th floor of the county city building, and the snow's coming down the first day it was New Year's Day, first day I was officially in office. And I'm thinking, I'm now responsible for making sure the snow gets plowed. And if we don't do it right, not only will I get in trouble politically, somebody could be harmed, right? But I think any office, any job, like you have to let that weight sit on your shoulders and then have it push you to be better at the job.
That's the...
oh, there we go.
There we go.
Yeah, that was election day. That was a great feeling. But I remember also immediately feeling this thrill of having won. And if you're a competitive person, it's also the excitement of having beaten your competitors, but having to balance that with, okay, I said that if you elected me, I'd be able to get these things done. And now I actually got to produce.
Are you scared of the consequences of being president one day?
Any president should be. Anybody who's even being seriously talked about or considered for it should be. Puts you in a position where you have a responsibility to say things that make sense and think about what you have to say and know that your words, even if you have no official power, but that still things that you do or say could help or hurt people just by talking, just by going on a podcast that millions of people listen to.
And there's really 4 frontrunners, according to the data that I saw, which is yourself, Gavin Newsom, AOC, and Kamala Harris. I've now interviewed 3 of them.
Which one haven't you got to yet?
AOC. I think this thing is in the works. Very different candidates, I'd say.
Yeah.
As individuals.
Yeah.
If not you, then which one of them?
It's just a bad idea to answer that question. I'm sorry. Like, I want to be transparent, but like,
You must have an answer though.
I don't know.
Let the truth set you free, secretary. I've met her. She was lovely. Gavin's nice. Which one are you closest friends with?
I mean, the one I've spent the most time with is her, because, you know, she was vice president and I was working transportation. There were times we traveled together. She was very involved in trying to get the infrastructure bill done, which is kind of the biggest thing that I worked on, the legislation to get roads and bridges and airports.
Is she misunderstood?
I think anybody at that level is misunderstood. There's just, I don't know if I'm qualified to evaluate kind of more or less than other people in that job. I think anybody, the vice presidency or any job with that visibility, just puts you in a position where it's hard for people to see your humanity when you're bearing the responsibility that you have. And even at other levels of government, I think this is true. I think high office does that. I think office that high especially does it.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.